Hello, everybody. It's Mr. Hooksprung, and I am just going to go over the quiz is questions. We're going to be taking our knowledge check, which is kind of our open book quiz. That's going to be happening on Thursday and Friday. This video is going to be shared out on Wednesday, so you're probably watching this on Wednesday. What we're looking at is the results as of Monday morning of all the quiz is players so far, what kind of answers and questions they've picked during the review. So I want to go over this kind of like when we go over the quizzes in class. I kind of go over what the questions were, what the answers were to help everybody out. So let's start with number one. In early Roman Republic, which group controlled the government and had the most power? That is the patricians. 69% of the people playing have chosen that answer. Remember, the patricians are the rich people. The root word that goes with patrician is like patron, which means father. So these were the people that were in charge. They were the rich and powerful people. The plebeians, these were the poor people. These were the people that had no power. So in early Roman Republic, it was the patricians that had the power. Now, in 494 BC, the plebeians went on strike and stopped serving in the military. Why did they do this? It was because they wanted the same rights patricians had. Now, the plebeians, they had to do all the same things the patricians had to do. They had to pay taxes, they had to work, they had to do all this stuff in Rome, but they had no say in how Rome was run. So they wanted to change that. So this was the big reason why they went on strike. So all these plebeians had to serve in the army and they were fighting for Rome, but they didn't get the benefits of all the things that the patricians were getting. So they decided, you know what, we're not going to fight anymore. Now that caused a big problem because the patricians needed Rome to be finishing these fights and conquering these enemies. And without all the soldiers, they weren't going to be able to do that. So they eventually had to give into this strike and give the plebeians some more rights. Now, how did the plebeians strike in 494 BC? I just mentioned that. They refused to serve in the military. That means that they stopped showing up. They were not going to go fight the wars for Rome. And that was something the patricians and the Roman government really needed. So they had to change the way they did things in order to get the plebeians to be happy and serve in the military again. Now, he is the best known early Roman dictator who left his farm, took absolute power, and gave it up when the crisis was over. This was that guy, Cincinnatus, we talked about. Cincinnatus was a former consul. That means he was one of the people in charge in Rome. He had retired, was living on his farm, and a crisis hit Rome. There was a war that had to be fought, and they needed someone that could be in total control. Because remember, Rome as a republic had lots of senators and consuls, and everybody had to come up with agreements and they would disagree, and it took a lot of time to get decisions made. So they needed one person to be in charge, and that was what they called the position of dictator. That was a person that would have total control for a short amount of time until the crisis was over. So they offered this all powerful position to Cincinnatus. He came in, he took it, and when the war was over, which took like 2 weeks, like 14 or 15 days, he then relinquished this power. He gave it up and went back to his retirement. Now, Cincinnatus could have used this power to help himself out. He could have made laws that would make him rich, but he did not do that. He felt that civic duty was something that was very important. Now, civic duty we talked about, that was when a person feels a responsibility to their community, to their civilization, and they do what they can to help it out. What were the 12 tables? 65% of people have chosen the first written code of laws adopted in 451 BC. This was with the plebeians. They were striking, they weren't happy. One of the reasons was because there were no written laws. Now, that doesn't mean that people didn't get arrested and have disagreements, but that meant you went to a judge and the judge got to decide what they were going to do. Problem was, all the judges were patricians. So when you went to court, a patrician, a rich person, was deciding what was going to happen, and they could do whatever they wanted to. They could choose to do one thing one time and do something totally different the next. The law was up to them to create, and this created problems, especially when it was a case between a plebeian and a patrician, because the judge was also a patrician. So a lot of times you'd see the patricians would help each other out. And that meant the plebeians would not get the justice they needed. Now, the 12 tables, these were the written laws that were posted in public. They were carved onto bronze tablets and hung up where everybody can see them. And these were the laws that everyone had to follow. That meant if someone went to court, the judge had to judge them according to those laws. Didn't matter who they liked better or what they wanted to do. These written laws were what was going to guide how justice worked and how the laws were going to work. Now, the Punic Wars, we watched a couple different videos of those, and there was a lot going on here. But the three Punic Wars were fought between Rome and the people from which of the following places? That place was Carthage. 63% of the people have chosen that. Carthage is this country in northern Africa, and it all started with them fighting over Sicily. And it would go on to encompass wars in what is now Spain. Carthage would even invade Italy and invade the surrounding areas of Rome. They never actually invaded the city of Rome, but they invaded many other places in Rome. That was with that guy Hannibal, and he marched his elephants across the Alps and into Rome, or into the country of Rome. All right, this person was given temporary complete control over Roman government during a time of crisis. 74% have chosen a dictator. A dictator is a person that has total power. Nowadays, we talk about that as kind of a negative thing. You know, a dictator is someone who just does whatever they want. They get to, choose how the laws are going to work. And if they change their mind, the laws change. Now, in ancient Rome, this was more of a positive thing at that time. A dictator was supposed to be someone who just acted in Rome's best interests and made all the decisions so decisions could be made quickly to help through crisis. Now, this was not something that happened all the time. It was during emergencies. So that was what the position of dictator was. This Roman general attacked Carthage during the Second Punic War, which drew Hannibal and his forces away from Rome, so Rome could defeat them. This is Scipio. Now, Scipio was the Roman general. He fought against Hannibal. And when Hannibal was invading parts of Rome, Scipio decided we're going to take the ships and we're going to attack Carthage. Now, when the homeland of Hannibal got attacked, Hannibal packed up and sailed back to defend it. And that meant that those Carthaginian soldiers left Rome and they would face them in Carthage, where Scipio would go on to defeat them in the ending of the Second Punic War. Which of the following would be a patrician? That would be a wealthy landowner. An artisan, a soldier, a farmer at that time, those would all be plebeians. The wealthy landowners, that's who the patricians were. Now, if you owned a farmer shop or worked with your hands to create things, which of the following best describes your place in Roman society? Well, if you were creating something, you were a worker, you would be a plebeian. Now, remember the dictator? That's the one person in charge of everything. That was typically going to be a patrician. A consul was one of the two people in control of the Roman government during normal times. These were the two people that had like the most power, kind of like presidents. And then the patricians, those were the rich people. The rich people were not working in shops and farming. So plebeian is the best answer. This Latin phrase means I forbid and describes the ability of some political positions to block laws or decisions. That is a veto. Back during these times, you had consuls had the ability to veto each other. Eventually, the plebeians got this position called a tribune. Now, the tribune had the ability to veto the consuls. So plebeians would actually be able to kind of stop other laws from going through. But the veto is basically a power to stop a decision from happening. And it literally translates to I forbid. It even works in our government today. Our state governor has the ability to veto different laws that come through his office, and our president also has that ability for laws that come through Congress and the Senate. 12. What describes the responsibility a citizen has to their country, like Cincinnatus did? That is that concept of civic duty. Civic duty is when you feel that you need to do whatever you can to help out your community, your town, your city, your country. That's what civic duty is. Now, what made the plebeians upset about Rome's first laws? It was D, that they were not written down, and they felt patricians would take advantage of them, which they did. They did not like the fact that there was no law that they could count on. They had to go before a patrician judge and hope that that judge would do what was right. Typically, they wouldn't. They would side with other patricians. So this was a big problem. They wanted the laws to be applied to everyone, and they wanted those laws to be written down so everybody knew what the rules were. It's kind of like playing a board game with a brother or sister who keeps changing the rules as you go so they can win. That's what the plebeians were trying to get rid of. 14. These were the first written code of laws in Rome that was posted for all to see. Patricians and plebeians were treated the same under them. We've already mentioned those. That is the 12 tables. 15. When the plebeians went on strike in 494 BC, what was done by the Senate to appease them? The word appease means to make them happy. The Council of Plebs was created. This means there's now a part of the government that was made up of plebeians. So finally, the plebeians had a say in the government. It wasn't just patricians. Now the plebeians would be able to kind of, help make laws that worked for them, help make sure Rome did not just take care of patricians, but took care of plebeians as well. Now, the patricians still had a lot of power, but this was a good start for them. And then number 16, in which conflict did the Roman navy drive the navy from Carthage away from the island of Sicily? Well, the First Punic War was over Sicily, where Carthage had kind of moved in and Rome moved in to get rid of them. Now, this war took like 20 years, and in this time, Rome had to create a navy. At the beginning of this, Carthage had a reputation as being some of the best sailors. They had great ships and they knew how to use them. Rome did not. Now, the story goes that the Romans found a couple of Carthaginian ships that had been shipwrecked on shore, and they captured them, they took them, and they kind of copied their design to make their own navy. And eventually, they became even stronger than the Carthage navy, and that's what helped them win the First Punic War when they drove them out of Sicily. All right, everybody, those were all the review questions on this game. I hope everybody is ready to go on the knowledge check slash quiz. Remember, you get to use your notes on it, so it's open notes. All right, everybody, I will talk to you soon.